Well, the first time that I became aware of this situation was late August of 2021. We received some correspondence in the mail from a company called Summit Carbon Solutions. You know, at the time I realized it was a pipeline. I didn't have the realization that CO2 pipelines were even a thing at that time. I assumed it was a natural gas or an oil pipeline. Well, didn't think about it too much at the time and waited for their public meetings to come up, and it was up at their public meetings, and I had done some research in the meantime to educate myself what we were particularly looking at here. This was not an oil or a gas pipeline. This was a pipeline that was going to be primarily funded by the 45Q tax credits from the federal government in support of the Green New Deal. This was something that particularly didn't fit the ideology that I've always held for myself. And where it really became a giant concern was at the public meetings, where I met a gentleman by the name of Ed Fishbach. And ever since from there, we've kind of been a team and really done a lot of good together, because Ed asked them, will this CO2 pipeline be able to obtain the use of eminent domain? They wouldn't answer his question, and he kept pressing them. And while they would not answer it, they would not commit to not using it. And then that's where it particularly became a huge issue for me. What really invigorated me to run was the approval and passage of Senate Bill 201. That was a bill that we received our first significant setback in South Dakota in this entire process. And that's what told me that if this stands, all hope is lost for family farms, and I so badly want to see them left in place. And so it really was because of that issue that ignited the entire state. But after having been through several legislative processes in the last couple of years, it became apparent to me that they don't listen to the common people. If you're not a powerful company or a high-powered lobbyist or a powerful individual in society, you in essence don't matter. And so it became obvious that the only way that we're going to be able to accomplish some positive change is by being on the other side of that table. And while it took a lot of soul searching and a lot of speaking with my family, but the amount of encouragement and support that I received from people, not only across my district, but clear across the state, told me that, Mark, this was something that you have to do. Because this doesn't just affect me. This affects so many people across the state and across the country. And if we can do a little bit of good here, maybe more people can do a little bit of good where they're from. But the very best that we can do for ourselves and our children and grandchildren currently is to face the threat that is right before us. We need to have better eminent domain laws in the state of South Dakota. Our property rights have always been held near and dear to every family farm and every property owner in our state. So that's the top priority, to reinforce that, because if we don't have that, we don't have much else. If they're simply able to come and remove your stuff from you against your will, what can't they do to you? And so we're going to have to deal with that specifically from the get-go, but at the same time, keep an eye on things in the future. The pipeline is the most efficient example and vehicle to procure a whole bunch of taxpayer dollars from the taxpayer via the federal government and place it into as few of hands as possible. And that's what they're after. They're after the money. This has nothing to do with climate change. This has nothing to do with making or improving the environment. It's pure, unadulterated greed. Now, the problem with insurance, most insurance companies have what they call a waiver called a pollution exclusion. And being compressed CO2 is considered a pollutant by the federal government, that will be covered under that waiver for the insurance policy. Primarily on family farms and ranches, you have a blanket farm liability policy. Now all of a sudden you're looking at over top of the easement of that pipeline, whether voluntarily signed or forcibly taken, you're not going to be covered on that. In the event of a rupture, the company does claim that they have anything above willful negligence will be covered by them. Well, with the actions that we've seen from that company, their word doesn't mean much. And when, upon a release, if it would affect your neighbor's property, say they've got a herd of cattle there, or God forbid, close to a home, because this is dangerous to human life as well as animal life. And if that property is destroyed, now the landowner can be held liable for that. as well as if there's a rupture, they're going to deem it negligence on your part simply because now the operations are shut down and they're not producing their tax revenue stream. And you're also going to probably be hit for loss of income on their part. The landowner will still pay the taxes. See, that is one thing that is very dangerous. There is a lot of talk across the country about eliminating foreign ownership of ag land, which is something that I'm entirely in support of. However, there is a caveat there that makes this a little bit more dangerous. They're still able to obtain an easement, they're still able to obtain a lease. There's a lot to be made for the argument that it's more desirable to control property via an easement or a lease, because now you're not responsible for the taxpayer or the property taxes on it. And that is going to be placed upon the burden of the normal everyday citizen that's lived there for 150 years. They can sublet it, they can mortgage it, they can sell it, they can change the terms on the easement through the lifetime of it. You are completely at their mercy for the remainder of that easement, which at this current time is perpetual, meaning forever. You are handcuffed and shackled, and that's the whole key to this. When it is your property, you should be able to have the ability to do what you see best for it, not have it dictated to you, regardless of how much money they pay you. Because as a multiple generational family farmer, I'm the 5th generation on our farm. We've been there since 1882, 143 years. My son, currently at 7 years old, is the 6th generation. We want to see that tradition survive for another 150 plus years and essentially forever. And the only way that that can be obtained is by maintaining the property rights that we have that allows us to produce as family farmers and ranchers. And if something as trivial as a project such as this can utilize the use of eminent domain, what possibly can't? And if they can remove that property right, basically our land ownership from us, there's no place for us left in the world, and that's not a world that I want to live in.